Today I have with me Stacy Conte on the show. And let me tell you a little bit about Stacy. I know you're going to enjoy this episode as much as I'm going to enjoy recording it. Stacy is an accomplished coach and certified professional. Her expertise extends to brain-based coaching through certification from the Neuro Leadership Institute and positive psychology coaching through the Whole Being Institute. Additionally, she holds certifications as a core energy coach, energy leadership index master practitioner, and transitions dynamics specialist from the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. Stacy specializes in a healthy habits transformation program that includes community, mindset, nutrition, and coaching. She is a certified professional in talent development designation from the Association for Talent Development. Stacy is equipped with a master's degree in learning design and technology from Georgetown University and skillfully harnesses her dedication to personal growth as a proficient learning designer. Stacy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here.
I want to dive into, in particular, there were a couple of things in your bio that really jumped out at me concerning the brain, how the brain plays into our perceptions of things, and then also your certification in the talent. And that just really jumped out at me. But before we do, I know you have a personal story on how you got on this path to helping moms with self-care. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Sure. I had worked in the Fortune 500 environment for over 20 years, raising my children. My children are now 15 and 13. So I was doing a lot of things not well, right? So I was going to work, trying to be the best I could at work, and then racing home, trying to raise my children and volunteer to be on, the board, and sort of separating those two worlds so that I could say, didn't really talk about my kids at work, a little bit, but I wouldn't say I have to leave for this, trying to do that and then come home and volunteer at the PTA and do all these things. Then I would come home and I would sit at dinner. I wouldn't be present at dinner. I would rush through dinner because I would think, okay, they have to eat dinner. Then I have to get them to the activities. And then after the activities, I have to go back up and check my email. I was just so drained. So then my eating, I had always exercised all of my life. And I was, like I had lost all of that, right? I never took time for myself. I started eating a lot. I started drinking a lot. So like if I had a good day, I would, put them to bed and I would have a gallon of ice cream and some wine and watch Netflix. If I had a good day, like if a good day bad, same thing happened, right? I was exhausted. I looked horrible. And then one morning, I'm making breakfast. And I'm getting lunches together. And my older daughter, this was a couple of years ago, she said to me, you look horrible and you're always in a bad mood. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I have two little girls. You're raising women, right? You're raising women. What am I showing them? I could say to them, you need to take care of yourself. You need to sleep. You need to do this. But what am I showing them? I'm showing them that I'm not taking care of myself. So they're going to mirror that. And then on top of it, like I wasn't good at taking care of them. Thought I was doing everything for them and I was shortchanging them. It wasn't the approach that I should have been taking. I was totally wrong. I was trying to be the hero. I was trying to say that I could do it all. I wasn't communicating effectively with my husband saying I can't do it all. I'd be like, I got it. I got it. I'm the hero. I got it. And I wasn't giving him a chance to really step up or anything like that. So really through that, I reached out to a coach. She was excellent. I started educating myself. Carol, we just spoke about like I'm an avid lifelong learner. I have many degrees and certificates. I love to learn. I love to read. I'm constantly reading. If you have a book for me, I'll read it. So I just started educating myself. And then after I worked with the coach, I'm like, she's got something here, right? And I love it. I love helping people. I love people. I love when individuals, my clients, see insights. It's just so fulfilling for me. And it's really, I just love communicating to moms and to everybody, right? Individuals, whether it be my husband, it doesn't have to be, a female. Like life doesn't have to be that hard. And everybody needs to take care of themselves because you can't, and I know everybody says this, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you don't love yourself, right, you can't give what you don't have. So that's what happened. And I've just been on this journey, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect. Now there's so many changes, right? So now I'm in my 40s. I'm perimenopausal. Things are happening to my mind and my body that have never happened before, right? I'm like, why don't I remember that? And why don't I remember the name of the guy that I just talked to? I'm like, am I losing my mind? There are things that I start to see, and I'm like, okay, here we go, more work. But I find that education and just having that experience, and when I started to have the brain fog, right, I was like, I need to help my clients with this. So then I read your book, which was excellent. But I just went out and I was like, you know what, I'm going to hit it hard, and I'm going to start reading all these books about perimenopause, just so I can really just share it with people.
It's such a transition. We go through all these phases, and you'll see this. It's interesting because our clients, the women that we work with, kind of come along with us. So it's interesting for me to see, like my clientele has aged with me, has gone through these transitions with me. And each decade, I think, of a woman's life brings these unique challenges. So you have the childbearing years, and then you have those 30s where you're running here and there, and maybe you're doing the PTA or whatever, all of the things. And then along comes perimenopause, and you've got all of these physiological changes in your body, plus maybe taking care of aging parents, career, young kids. We talked about this prior to recording, the sandwich generation that you're caught into. Do you find that to be true? Do you see this in women?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just ran into a woman yesterday, and she said to me, "Oh, mother's pathway." Well, I'm a mom, but it probably doesn't affect me because, I just got divorced and my kids are in their 20s and they're getting married now. I'm like, okay, that's a huge transition. And
Hmm.
then she said to me in the next breath, and she goes, "And menopause it's driving me crazy." And I was like, "Oh, you're right." Like, just because you don't have little children, right? It's just, and then, yeah, on top of it, like everybody's parents are getting older, right? You're trying to, depending on when you had children, you might have had children in your late 40s, right? And then you have you're trying to go to those play dates, right? And you're trying to be the young mom and keep up with the other younger moms. However, you have a very ill parent that's older, right, than the other moms, right? That you have to take care of. You have stresses that they don't have, and you have things that they don't understand. So yeah, there's a huge spectrum, right, of what we as women have to really contend with in our daily lives. Yeah,
That's
I do
true.
see
That's
that.
true. There's differences in when someone starts their family. I know I had friends that started right away, like 2021, married, kids, and they were having grown kids when I was just kind of getting out the gate in my
Yeah.
30s with my kids. And then having adopted, that brings different challenges. It's not that adoption is necessarily different in terms of how you parent and that experience, but I found that adopting in my 30s, and three kids from China, and then there's this little bit of guilt sometimes that you will have. It's interesting, especially with international adoption and with China. One of the main reasons that these children are, we can adopt them, is that they were abandoned at birth. And so I remember bringing home my kids and feeling this extra, I don't want to say pressure, because it was a beautiful, beautiful time of life. So I don't want to sound like, oh, wow, this was so hard. It wasn't. But this, I have to make up for how their life started. So there's all these different circumstances as women, from when we start the family to all of the hormonal changes that we go through. Is our family from adoption? Is it a blended family, which is a whole other type of challenge? So the landscape changes for sure.
Yeah, and the guilt is overwhelming, right? So your guilt, right? So you're trying to live in, you're like, look at the how grateful I am, right? For being able to give, not only give these children an opportunity, right? To bring them, like their life would be very different if you and your husband did not show up in their life. So you're like, look what I can give. And it's very fulfilling to you. And you try at the same time to be grateful. But then you move on and then you're like trying to go forward and then you feel guilty about what they went through. Then you're like, oh, would it not be fair? We're a different race than our children. Like there's like there's I'm sure like you had your challenges there, right? I would love to hear about that, like your experience with that. Um, because the world is not kind sometimes. So there's guilt there, right? So, anything we do, even when we try to feel grateful, it's tainted with guilt. Right?
It is. And that's
Mhm.
that's being a mom in a nutshell. We always feel, we look back and we think, "Oh, I could have done that better. I could have responded differently." And that is just this ongoing thing, regardless. But yeah, with being a mixed racial family, which is funny, I don't think about it much anymore. It's just our family and our kids. I had to put aside this whole thing, and it came from the adoption agency, where they were like, you have to immerse them in their culture. This has to be done. We had to even sign things saying that we would do this. And so here I am trying to, like, Chinese lessons and all these things.
Yeah.
And my daughter, I remember she actually had a little bit of a thing where she did not want to be around Chinese women. And I figured out later there was maybe some kind of subconscious thing going on there. But here I was pushing, okay, we're going to go to Chinese New Year. You're going to have Chinese lessons. And she wanted no part of it. And she's screaming bloody murder when I would, drop her off at the lessons. And I had to step back and go, you know what? Their culture is here how we are in America. And yes, they should feel, like they can explore that at a later date, but they really didn't want it. They just wanted to be with their friends as they grew up. They didn't want to be different. They didn't want to explore that. And so I had to stop pushing that, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that does make sense. It does. I mean, like we all go through, right? We have to step back. And I'm going through that challenge right now with my older daughter. But like we have to step back. Like you want to do the right thing, right, Carol? So you want to do the right thing. And then, but, and my daughter says it to me. She's 15. I mean, they have such wise words sometimes, right? She's like, it's what you want. I don't, because I'm like, you like this, you want to do this. And she was like, no, you want me to like this. Um, and you want me to be happy. But that's not really the fact. And there's many times where I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like, yeah, they're very wise, right? Like you had to really listen, right? And that's the communication. And that's really what, when I meet with clients, a lot of times they'll say, they should just know, or I'll say, how do you know, how did you communicate, um or ask them, right, ask them if they enjoyed this, and they're like, oh, I didn't, I just know that they'll enjoy it, right? So and we assume as mothers, like, oh, this is and many times I run into this is like their trajectory, right? This is their path. Let me make it for them, because you want your children to be successful. But you need to take a step back and say, hey, there's plenty of room at the top, and they can be successful in many ways. So are we checking the box, or are we really listening and communicating?
That's such a good point, Stacy. Excuse me. And when you think about, I mean, going back to the self-care piece, taking
Yeah.
that pressure off of ourselves to try to make our kids do something or be something that's really not them. Because you see this with, like, my sister had a thing about piano. So she forced my niece to do piano, and it backfired big time. It turned into this big back and forth. You're going to do your practice. You're going to go to piano lessons because it was what she wanted and she never had them as a girl. So it's like, no, no, you're going to do this thing. And so with self-care, what I'm thinking about as you were speaking is that's really a way indirectly of doing self-care, of letting go of some of the expectations that we inflict upon our kids.
Oh, absolutely. And in my, with clients, I always say the first step is awareness, right? Be aware of what's going on. You need to sort of take those blinders off. And that's what I try to do. I try to say, okay, let's gain some awareness here, right? So when they gain awareness, then they have to accept it. You have to accept it. You accept that your daughter doesn't want piano lessons, right? Then from there, only there, like when you can take the emotion out and you can accept it, you can truly accept it. I mean, it's very hard to accept it. Because you're like, and I noticed with myself, I'm like, okay, maybe one more thing, and maybe she'll really like it this time. I drive it home like one more time, right? But you need to accept it, let it go, and then only from there can you make clear choices. So maybe pivot. You don't want piano lessons? Let's go to the trumpet, right? Maybe that will fulfill you. But we need to be aware, gain awareness, accept it, and then we can move on and make clear choices. And it's a release that is a huge deal with self-care. That is a huge. I see it with myself. I'm like, I don't need to worry about that anymore. I'm putting the pressure on myself, right? No one's telling me, like, I'm putting pressure on my child and I'm putting pressure on myself saying, oh, she needs to have piano lessons because she's going to be successful. And, like we're putting unneeded pressure on ourselves, that things that don't matter that much and
That's
don't make the
true.
people around us happy. I mean, I know that my goal is to make my family happy, and like that's my goal. I want to be happy together. I want to enjoy each other. I want them to flourish. I want them to smile. I want my husband to smile. I want my sisters to smile. I want to be a positive force and for them to be happy. So then and we think that putting pressure on them is going to make them happy because it's going to make them successful, and success is happiness. Is it? you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And how do you define success?
That's
Right? How
true
does that
because it's going to be
child
very
define
individual.
success? Yeah, it's
Hmm.
very individual. Everybody's journey, right, is very individual. Like everybody has different values. Everybody has a different journey. Your journey is much different than my journey, right? You shared some really great. You showed a lot of vulnerability in your book, which I very much appreciate. Thank you for that. It was very special. But reading it, your journey's way different than my journey, right? So, we all have our own paths.
We do. There's that. I always call it the bioindividuality, and I'm usually referring to health, nutrition, and those things, but I think it applies across that bioindividuality applies to everything, how we view things, how we process things. And I know now having adult kids, and it was funny, I was thinking about this as you were talking, what you remember isn't whether they got an A on that term paper or that test that you stood over them and like, get this done, get your homework done, all of these things. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be done, that's important and has a place. But what you remember is all of the good times, the hikes in the mountains, the camping, the boating, we took cruises, we did things together as a family. And so it's funny that we put this pressure of perfection, almost like if our kids have a misstep, if they fail a test, it reflects back on us. But in the end, that's not what matters. That's not what stands out in our memories, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. The experiences are what we remember, right? And how we feel is what we remember. I mean, I probably drove something home in first grade for my daughter about a test, and I don't remember it. But I remember, right? I remember a great vacation. I remember when we went to Disney World and I remember when we went to Disney World and I paid through the nose, and I'm sure everybody on this call has, to have breakfast with the princesses, right? And she was like, a princess. Oh my gosh. And I cried. Like, I remember that. I was like,
Oh.
and my husband was like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "'Cause she's so happy." I'm like, I remember that, because I was present in that moment. And that's another thing. We need to be present in the moment with our families. And we're not going to be present in that moment if we put so many stressors on ourselves and we don't take care of ourselves. There are many, many different times where I wasn't present in the moment, right? When in the example that I gave you, I mean, there was a few years where I was working very hard jobs and raising two little girls where I was checking the box, coming home from dinner. How present was I in the moment at dinner? I was saying, "Oh, I'm at dinner every night with my girls." I wasn't present. I mean, I can't, I mean, did we have good conversations? I can't right now I'm sure if I really thought about it and took the time, I could think about one or two. But there was a time in my life where I was checking the box, doing too many things not well, and wasn't taking a step back, and I wasn't present in the moment for them or myself. I was putting pressure. I'm like, they can't know that I'm home having dinner. And then I need to get them to dance class after they eat dinner, but they have to eat the whole thing, and they have to eat the green beans and the protein. And, I never even, then I was like, then I'm going to drive them to dance and then put them to sleep. And then, no wonder I was like, and the ice cream, and then I gained weight. I wasn't taking care of myself. And another story I have for you, Carol. So I wasn't taking care of myself. I said in the beginning I had always exercised. That went totally out the window. And I think you'll appreciate this when, in your book you had stated that you had three young children, but you had parents that you were taking care of and they were ailing, and you lost your parents within 6 months of each other, which is terrible. And it's just something that no one needs to be going through, right? So I had a pain in my arm, right? That I couldn't get rid of, and for months. And probably at that time in your life, you said, "Oh, I have a pain here, but I have to take care of my parents and my kids. I'm not going to go to the doctor." And it's whether you're a mother or you're a caregiver for anybody, right? If you're a caregiver for your parents, you're going to put them first. If my daughter had a pain in her arm, I'd be like, "We're on the phone with the orthopedic. We're going tomorrow." I let it go for months. So I go to the doctor. My doctor's on vacation. I went to the doctor. There's basically I think he graduated from medical school like the day before. Like he was on call. He was just replacing. My blood pressure was through the roof. So I got transported to the emergency room. I live in New York, as we talked about before. They thought I was having an aortic separation because my blood pressure was so high, and they almost airlifted me to Columbia Medical Center. Ended up, it was fine. The chief resident came in. She said, "Everybody stop. Let's figure it out." And it was high blood pressure. But it was high blood pressure because of my weight, because of me not eating well, not taking care of myself, not going to the doctor. I was overweight. My blood pressure was through the roof. I got transported to the hospital because I don't even remember the number. I don't know. And honestly, I could go back and ask my doctor to look in the charts, but I don't want to know because I know it was probably awful that I can't even think about it. Like, God knows, what am I going to do? What if they lost me? Right? Like, what was I doing? I was neglecting myself because I thought I was taking care of them. Then I'm at the emergency room. My two little girls are with my sister, and how fair is that to my sister? She's like, "Mommy's gonna be okay." In her head, she's like, "Oh my gosh, my sister, I don't know if mommy's gonna be okay." And I'm lying to her children. And then she has to deal with her feelings of what if the possibility of her losing me, right? It's just unfair. We think that we're ignoring things because we want to take care of my family. In that situation, not taking care of myself and not taking care of my health, I put my sister's feelings on the back shelf, and I thought I was doing it to serve everybody, and my children's and my husband's, 100%. It's, you think you're serving other people, but you're not. When you don't take care of yourself, you're putting them in danger.
Oh, I agree. I could not agree more. And this story, I had a woman on the show. Dana Frost, Vitally You is her business, and she described it's somewhat similar to what you described. She was having a burning in her chest,
Mhm.
and she ignored it. And then I believe she cut a finger or something cooking an avocado, wound up in the emergency room, and they discovered a problem with her heart. They put in a pacemaker. But she described it to me. She said, I think I had rage. I was angry. And I understood that. It's not that you're angry at your kids or your husband or your whatever. It's an internal, I think when you're neglecting yourself, you don't have any time for yourself. You can't take care. You can't fill yourself up before you help others. There can be this burning resentment, I think, deep inside.
Oh, 100%. You're not thinking clearly. So you're angry and everything sets you off, right?
Yes, it
Everything
does.
sets you off. Like when you're not taking care of yourself and you're not doing some self-care, even like the half an hour, right? Like a half an hour by yourself. I mean, like I look back on things that and you feel guilt about this, like that I've corrected my children on, and I'm like, why was that a big deal? Because I wasn't taking care of myself and I didn't have the patience to understand or I didn't hear them. I wasn't listening to them. I wasn't
Hmm.
listening to them because I was trying to check the box and be on to the next thing. So I wasn't even listening to explanations. And because I wasn't clear on what I was hearing, I wasn't able to effectively communicate. I mean, like, probably they didn't do something wrong, and I'd be like, oh, well, I'm taking away your iPad. And probably didn't warn it because I wasn't clear. You get angry because you're not taking care of yourself. So it's just,
Exactly.
yeah. How can you
Exactly.
be, how could you think clearly when you're not feeling well?
You
When,
can't.
when you
And
don't
then you get
feel well.
impatient and you're stressed and you're rushing your kids. I know I did that a lot. I was like, come on, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Because we were, in the car and we were running here and we were running there. And I know one thing I would do differently is pause and have more conversations with my kids. I would pause and just like you say, be in the moment and take it all in. Oh, we're on this beautiful cruise ship, or we're out in these mountains or on this boat. I would have just, instead of just rushing to the next thing, I would have paused and just taken that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Pausing and really asking permission. I find that asking permission to have conversations. So, just to my little one, she's 13. So I wanted to have a conversation with her. And, before you're like, you don't have time. You're like, I need to have this conversation. We need to talk about her behavior. Right. So when I wasn't giving myself the time or even caring about myself or effectively communicating, I would have went in there and said, I'm your mother. Sit down, put down that phone right now. And we're having a conversation. My approach now is very different. I'll walk in and I'll say, hi, you knock. I want to have a conversation about X, Y, and Z, right? Is right now a good time for you? If it's not, we can talk about when we can do it. A lot of times she'll say, okay, sometimes, and I do the same with my husband. I do the same with everybody actually, now because I feel like it's very effective. Sometimes she'll say, not right now. Sometimes she'll say, okay. Never, ever, ever, when I come back at the time that she says, will she ever say no to me? And then we have a great conversation because I gave her that power. I gave her that permission. When you walk in somewhere, right? And this is the same. This is what I used to do to my husband. I used to walk in and be like, I'm busy at work. Tomorrow, you need to pick up the girls at this time, this time, this time, right? I walk in, not say hello. How was your day? Right? Like I didn't because I was like, we need to get things done. So he's walking in, like, so I was like, he needs to do more, but like you don't give him a chance. So now I walk in, I say, how was your day? And we'll talk. I'm swamped tomorrow. At some point, I would like to have a conversation with you. Would right now be a good time? He might say, today in New York is like a heat wave. He might say today, I'm so hot because he works outside. I can't do it right now. Let me take a shower and then I promise we'll have a conversation. Very different. Um, and we have a nice conversation. You're not going to wake somebody out of a deep sleep and say, let's have a conversation. But you will do that if you're not taking care of yourself because you need to get things done. You think you need to get things done because if you don't get things done, and like you said before, Carol, this is really interesting. You're afraid, right? Like what you said about the test. what is everybody going to think of me if they don't do well on the test? Right? Like, and then like, that's a lot of our, it's about us. And that's, we can't put pressure on, on ourselves for, I can't put pressure. My daughter's going to be in 10th grade. I can't put pressure on myself for how she performs on a test. I mean, we think that everything's a reflection of ourselves,
We
unfortunately.
do. We do. It's interesting. One of the beautiful things with menopause is that we stop needing to people please. We stop needing to put that pressure on ourselves. And this was so interesting when I was reading up on this. And it's the decline, the drop in estrogen. So we think of it as being such a negative thing. And yes, there can be some negative effects. But it's interesting that we cross over into menopause and some of that people pleasing, some of that need of perfection goes out the window.
Yeah, and like I love that because I find that, I mean, there are crosses to bear with menopause. I think we all know that, right? Being perimenopausal. However, it's like an awakening, right? It's a different journey. So what I do now is my second career. Like I said, I was 25 years in the Fortune 500 corporate environment, right? So I awakened. I moved on, right? It was a permission. I wouldn't have done this 10 years ago. I would have not have done this 10 years ago. So you accept it and you're able to move on, right? It's a different journey and you stop sort of caring what's going to be expected to you. So being perimenopausal, I found it to be an opportunity, right? To embrace and to move forward and to be free of that guilt. And I
Yes.
think that's how you learn when you get older. You're free of the guilt. It's a freedom. It's moving forward. Like that's what coaches do. I always say to individuals, I ask them, like, what do you know about therapy? What do you know about coaching? Therapy is very much looking behind, right? What I do is we look forward. We look forward and we plan. I mean, we're going to talk about what happened to get you here, right? But the emphasis is on moving forward and accepting and making clear choices to move forward to have you live a more fulfilled, happier life.
I love that. I love that. So a woman comes to you and she really is, she's burned out. She's doing all of the things. Let's say she's in that perimenopausal window, and
Hmm.
you have a program you take them through. You have a method called PATH. Is that correct?
Path, yes. Hmm. Hmm.
Can you
Yep.
describe what would you do with her? How would you walk her through these 4 steps?
So the PATH program, it stands for priorities, accountability, transitions, and then HERO, which is my favorite part, which is the self-care and sustainability, right? So what I would say is, and what I always say, like when they come in when, women come in overwhelmed, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why? And a lot of times they'll say, oh, because I have to. I go there because like I'm gonna go out with my girlfriends. I really don't want to. I'm really, really tired, but I'm afraid that they won't invite me anymore if I don't go. So I go. And I know it's not good for my family. And people say this to me. So I always say, or I'm volunteering I'm the president of the PTA, right? I'm like, why? Do you enjoy it? Is it authentic to you? And they're like, no, I hate it. So what I say to them is, um, what that event, that relationship, that person, that job, if it weighs you down and doesn't make you lighter, it needs to go because you're doing something based on how you want other people to perceive you. You're not doing anything you're not doing something that's authentic to your needs and your desires or your values. You're just doing, I mean, like, and we all see that on Facebook. Like, people are putting things on social media of how they want to be perceived, not how they're living life, or how they, it's people are sort of faking, right?
They are.
So,
Yes.
so what we really do is, so when they come in overwhelmed like that, I'm like, okay, let's talk about the energy and how you're reacting to stressors and how you're going through life and how you are showing up every day. And then we go through, I give them an assessment, an empowerment assessment. we talk about it, and I say, there's 7 energy levels that I focus on. And I say, okay, so you're, one of them, like it's very much a victim. And I'm like, so where do you see this? And they're like, oh, I see it at work. And then I'm like, how do you want to show up? And then you see, and no one wants to show up like that. And then what we do from there is we identify their values. What are your core values? What is really inside you? Like, really dig down deep and let's identify your core values together. And then we talk about stressors. There are 6 stressors that I identify. They're physical stressors, environmental stressors, mental stressors when you can't concentrate, which is huge, right? Huge in the perimenopausal world, because I'm going through that right now. There's a multitude of stressors that are in our life, and we go through each of the stressors and we talk about how they affect their lives, right? And what they really want to focus and hone in on. And then we go from there. It's very boutique-y what I do. It might be like everybody has their own journey, and my clients choose how they want to do it, right? So we go from there, and we talk about energy levels. We talk about how we want to show up in life. We talk about our values. We talk about our stressors, because I might have an environmental stressor, but you don't. I mean, you might, New Mexico's great, right? Like, um, you know, so different people have, the influencers influence them different ways in life. So we do go through there, but I'm very much in the camp of, and I was so guilty of this. I was doing so many, like, why do you have to be president of an organization? Why not just say, I want to help, because it makes you feel good to help, right? It makes me feel very, very good to help. But why do I have to be the president? I can just do something, this is what I have the time for. This is what I have the time allotted for. Let me give the way I can. You don't have to do it all. Don't have to do it all. Give yourself permission. Have awareness that you can't do it all. Accept it, like I said before, and then make clear choices on what's going to make you happier and healthier. Set out that time. I can't do this. I can't be the president because I need to take a walk every morning in nature, and I need to breathe in nature because it makes me a better person, right? So you have to think those ways, and a lot of people, when you ask those questions, I ask a lot of questions. I guide people. I don't really tell them what to do. When I ask those questions, I'm like, how are you moving your body? And they're like, I should, right? And then, so I can't be the president because I need to move my body every day because it makes me happier. And then you make clear choices. And by doing, I don't know if this makes, it kind of makes, let me know if this makes sense. So when you do less, you can achieve more.
Yes.
Because when you're well rested, right? And you sleep, we can get to sleep later. That's huge on my list. When you sleep and you're well rested, you can make clear choices and you're way more efficient. So we're trying to achieve this superhero image of being efficient and getting everything done. And I'm a multitasker. I'm a mom. I can do everything, blah, 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 right? But you're not. I mean, it's counterintuitive. You're less efficient because you're taking too much on and you're not doing anything well.
That is so true and so good. I love that you touched on this. Really, I was thinking as you were speaking, it's like setting boundaries with yourself. So you're setting them with other people, saying, you know what, no, I can't be the president because, and we don't even need to say the because
No.
I was guilty of that, feeling like, saying no to somebody for something, and then feeling like I needed to give them this long-winded explanation instead of just letting it rest and saying,
Yeah.
not at this time. I can't do
Yeah.
this at this time, and no, I'm sorry, I cannot commit to that right now. And just let that be. Let the no be a no and set those boundaries with ourselves, because really, if somebody's walking all over our boundaries and asking us to do too many things, I consider it, that's on me. Like, I let this
Mhm.
happen. I opened it up and let this happen. And I think that's a big piece of this.
Yeah. Every relationship begins with you. You're giving permission to people to treat you like that. And to, because when you don't say no, I was the queen of boundaries, of not being able to set boundaries, the queen. I was like, oh, because I'd say, oh, well, I can do it. If you want something done right, you do it yourself. I can do it. I'm the queen of multitasking. And they think I'm good at it. right? So that's why they're asking me. They're, maybe, yes, maybe they think you're good at it, but maybe they know that you won't say no. You know, maybe they're like, "Oh, she'll do it. That's a horrible job, but she'll do it." You don't know. You don't know what other people are thinking. So you really need to be so the point that you just like you need to be honest with yourself because you don't know what other people are thinking. You're making stories in your head, like, and there's stories that you can make up in your head in both a positive way and a negative way. You could think, oh, they think I'm really good at something, when they're really thinking, she'll do it, and I don't want to do it. So let's move it on. So that's why you really have to be authentic to yourself and do the things that you want to do because you don't know what people are thinking. We're not mind readers. So you need to do what fulfills you and makes you happy and what you have time for and what serves you and your family. Right. Well,
And it's really something good that we do, not just for ourselves, but for the other person. I was thinking about how I don't work with everybody in my coaching business, and that was a hard boundary for me to find because initially it was like 80-year-old man, no problem. 17-year-old girl, no problem. And
yeah.
that's stressful to be all over the place. And now just saying, you know what, I'm not the best coach for you. And it's not that anything's wrong with me or them, but it's not the best fit. And then saying, I have a colleague or someone I know that would just be perfect for who you need. And that's something that I can give someone. So it's not just for me. I might not be the best coach for them. So those boundaries, I think, that old saying about what is it? Fences make good neighbors. That's how I think
Yeah.
of the boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes. Very. And health wise, like, sleeping, being perimenopausal, sleeping, everything comes when you don't make time to take care of your health. Um, everything spans from there. It's so funny. So I have a fancy scale that measures, and after I lost 60 pounds, it said on my scale that I was 50 years old. Yeah. It said on my scale that I was 50 years old. And then, like I have one of those scales that measures, like everything under the sun, right? It said my body age was 50 years old. When I was done after I lost the 60 pounds, it said I was 42 years old. I gained 8 pounds in my life. I mean, like, I don't like, right? Like, I don't know if that's factual, like if I live but I'm going to live longer. I'm going to live longer because I put myself as a priority and I'm going to live longer. I'm going to live longer to see my children get married. I'm going to be able to be one of those grandmothers that gets down on the floor and wrestles with my grandchildren. I might see my great great grandchildren. You don't know, right? But I know if I continued on that path of not taking care of myself, I probably wouldn't have seen, like the episode that I had in the hospital, what would I have seen with my family? And what would they have done without me? Like, they love me, right? You love your mother, right? My sisters love me. My mother loves me. My mother's still alive. Like, what would I do to my 80-year-old mother if I didn't take care of myself and something happened to me? And
Right.
like, right, and like and I'm very fortunate. I have three sisters, so my mother's 80 years old, but we have to take her to doctor's appointments, right? But I will say to her, or I'll say to my sisters, and I'm very fortunate that they're great. But I'll say, like I have to go. I have my walk then. I'm like, or I'll say, can she? Or I'll say to my mother, and she gets a little annoyed with me, but she understands. But I'm like, can you reschedule that doctor's appointment? I can take you later in the day, but like that's when my class is, right? Like, or something, or like my book club, or like something that is self care. And sometimes people are like, they'll roll their eyes, right, because they think self-care is sort of like being selfish, but it's quite the opposite. Self-care is being selfless, I think, because it's making you accessible for a longer period of time to the people that love you and that you love.
Yes, yes, agreed. So much and such a good point. Now, when you're working with people, I know you have a couple of certifications I mentioned in the beginning that really intrigued me, and one was concerning the brain. I'm assuming the brain
Yeah.
and maybe perception and behavior, and the other was talents. Can you talk about this a bit and how you use them?
So, brain-based is more, what I really focus on with my brain-based coaching is habits, right? Because you have habits, right? Your habits are not going to go away. Your habits, I was just talking about habits yesterday with one of my clients. And her habit is to never say no. Ever, 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 ever. Right? She just goes anywhere, right? She goes to every event. She feels guilty about saying no. She never ever says no. So that's her habit. She's been doing, I said, how long have you been doing that? She's like, I don't remember when I've never said, she's said no, right? So she always says no. She never. So that's a habit that she will always have. And so basically, you have to strengthen those neural pathways, right? To be stronger to
Mhm.
replace that habit. So what I do is, so basically it's strengthening your neural pathways to really go into a different direction. And that's, the basis of brain-based coaching is working with neural pathways and to train them to go in the positive direction and the direction that you want it to go to make you happier and more rested. And just, yeah. And then, so did that answer your question about the brain
It
based?
did,
Yeah.
it did,
Okay.
'cause it makes perfect sense. Because even physiologically, it's interesting. I've had a lot of therapy where they work on the fascia, so something will get
Yes.
tight. I'm doing a wrong movement pattern when I'm lifting weight or I'm compensating, and they said something very similar. "Oh, we have to create a new pathway. You've gotten used to your
Muscle
body's gotten
memory.
used." Yes, your body's gotten
Yes.
used to taking this incorrect pathway that's
Hmm.
that's hurting you over and over and over and over again. So I imagine it as being very similar to that.
It's very similar. So it's very similar when you go to like a performance coaching aspect. We call it muscle memory, right? So it's
Right.
retraining and that's very much part of being an athlete too. It's retraining the neural pathways and incorporating that into muscle memory as well. So yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. But the other question that you had asked me was about the training and development. So when I was in corporate America, I did some corporate training. So I'm certified in training and development. So also from my master's degree from Georgetown in learning and design and technology, I very much the focus is on cognitive ability and how to really teach adult learners. So I was able to leverage that in my coaching practice because I'm aware of different cognitive abilities and to really hone in on how people learn and how they're able to absorb things. So I'm able to guide um, very well because I can understand when I speak to people how they learn and how they absorb information. And then from there, I can help guide to, you know, so it's very customized to them. So it's very much served me well because, some people will say to me like, well, you were, doing this for 25 years, you're in corporate America, but it's served me very well because I'm able to sort of leverage what I've gotten there in a very strong way and a unique way. And also I teach workshops as well. So that, um, I'm teaching actually a workshop called Healthy Mama Shape and Nourish, which is great. So it's shape involved. So for over the years, I was a spinning instructor. So I was a group exercise instructor. I did a little bit of training. So like I said before I let go. I was actually, and I lived in Manhattan, in a younger age. And actually, before I had children, and a little bit after I had children, I used to teach spinning. I used to teach kickboxing. I taught a little Pilates. So I do have a background in group exercise. So this program is 12 weeks, and it's called Healthy Mama Shape and Nourish. And basically, it's shape involves like a sculpting class for all levels. And in your book, which I've been doing so much of, is the age that we're at. I wasn't doing enough strength training, Carol, and not heavy enough. And I found that really I'm getting very energized because I upped the weights and I've been doing full body 3 times a week. So thank you for that. But and I do the rest in between. But I was like, wow, yeah, she's right, because I was incorporating a lot of sculpting, but I was doing a little too much cardio, right? And exhausting myself. So, and over exercising. I mean, I did a lot of that, over exercising, which contributed to a tremendous amount of up and down, because I was being hard on myself. If I wasn't working out 2 to 3 hours a day, it wasn't good enough. Then I would lose the weight and then I would gain it back. There was no consistency. I wasn't doing enough weights. I thought I had to run a marathon. I had to get on the spinning bike for like 4 hours. I would see results and then it would come back. Like it was constantly, there was no consistency. So just to get back on what I was saying, so this program, and then there's a Nourish. So there's a Nourish class where I go over mindfulness, I go over healthy eating habits, um, you know, low GI diets, not diets, sorry, healthy transformations. Like we don't want to talk about diets, we want to talk about lifestyle changes. Um, there's a lot of, valuable insights that we talk about: sustainable weight loss, sustainable exercise programs, really honing in on, taking care of your muscles when you're perimenopausal, and avoiding the osteoporosis and everything like that. And I found that as I get older, I really have to focus that in on that. So that's my 12-week program, and I do it. I'm in Pleasantville, New York, so I do it in the space here. I have a great facility where I have a training room, and I also have a group exercise room, as well as my office. I'm in a great building. However, I know that everybody's located everywhere, so I do have cameras to do it via Zoom as well. So it's a great class. I love it, and each participant gets a workbook that they can take with them, and we can work together on it, just so that they have that with them after the 12 weeks is over. I love it. I really enjoy it.
I love your holistic approach. I think that's really important because it's not one thing. When I was writing
Yeah,
my book, that really came to me. People think, oh, if I just had the right supplement, if I just had the right meal plan, if I just had the right exercise plan. And it's
yeah,
all of these things: sleep, stress management, self-care, all of the things. And then the way that you're addressing the strength training, so important. I have a saying, I'm going to have t-shirts made: muscle saves lives, because
yes,
it's
yes,
so true. So true.
yep.
My husband took a fall off of a roof,
Mhm.
just got a sprained ankle and a sprained wrist, and the doctor told him, you'd have broken multiple bones if it wasn't for the muscle. I took a spill out thanks to a fancy shoe where a strap broke, fell over backwards. Doctor told me the same thing, said, this could have been a hip fracture, a broken
Mhm.
arm, but you have so much muscle on you and strength. I was partially able to catch myself, so I didn't go all the way back. And just that armor around. So what a beautiful gift to give women. It's like I said, it's not just one thing. It's this holistic approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, and that's with anything. Like, when you keep your body healthy, you can bounce back from anything. I didn't have children. I was, when I had my first child, I exercised all through pregnancy. I was pretty good about it. I mean, I took care of myself very well, right? It's so funny because, like, I remember somebody saying, so I took care of myself like you would not believe when I had that baby inside me, right? But I gave birth to her, I didn't, right? I was like very conscious about what I ate. I was like, oh, because I was pregnant and I cared about her, right? As soon as I had her, that all went out the window. But I will tell you, the reason why I'm telling you this story. I mean, I chose not to have any drugs during labor, and I gave birth, and it was no problem, and I bounced back immediately from it. The second one wasn't that way at all. It was very, very hard because I had a 2-year-old. I did not take care of myself. I didn't do anything horrible, but I wasn't as active at all. I couldn't. Well, I thought I couldn't, because they're 2 years apart. So I did not take care of myself as well as I did in the second pregnancy. And I will tell you, and I didn't do any drugs with the second pregnancy. They were very, very different, those two, the recovery and the labor. And the second one, they say, is supposed to be easier, but I wasn't healthy. I wasn't taking care of myself. So my labor I mean, I didn't really mind labor the first time. The second one, I was like, oh my God, this is awful, because I wasn't healthy. And then the recovery took me way longer because I wasn't sleeping. I didn't take care of myself. wasn't doing my self-care. It was perfectly evident. And that's why you take care of yourself. You were able to bounce back. Your husband takes care of himself. He was able to bounce back. You don't have that downtime now.
Right. It's a non-negotiable for us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. And that's what I love that word. I always say, what's your non-negotiable? So I always say that to my clients, what's your non-negotiable? And usually it's like my children. Well, if your children are your non-negotiable would be to take care of your children so that you can be better. I mean, take care of yourself
Right.
so you can be better at taking care of your children. That should be everybody's non-negotiable, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time,
Yes,
Stacy. And as we wrap up, just a couple questions. Was there anything that we didn't cover you want the listener to know? And then I know you have a podcast that's coming soon, and you
yes.
have a workshop coming soon. Where can listeners get a hold of you, follow your work, get in contact with you, and potentially work with you?
So I am at Pleasantville, New York, as I said before. My podcast is coming soon, and it's called Beyond Mommyhood, Managing Change. And then I am very active on Facebook, motherspathway.com, Mother's Pathway. My website is motherspathway.com. My name is Stacy Riley Conte on Facebook as well. And I have a free giveaway to give away today. I'm very passionate about what I do. So if you go to thrivingmomsguide.com, there is a free documentation on ways to thrive as a mom. And you can get in touch with me that way as well. I would love to hear from any of you, just anything with questions or anything about my experience. And I love this. I love chatting. As you see, I talk a lot. And I love chatting with you, Carol, and your book was excellent. I loved it. It's like
Aw,
whoever's on this call and has not read Carol's book, you need to go and do that because it was great. It's a feel good book, and I just loved it. And I'm going to repeat, Carol, what I said before. At the end of the book, Carol compares a hike that she had with her husband um, with, transitions through life. And she writes, and I'm going to read it. Then there is hope in the distance if we don't allow our minds to take us further off the path. And it very much resonated with me. And I just thought it was just a beautiful thing as we continue through this perimenopausal journey, right? They were just such beautiful, beautiful words. And it was very knowledgeable. And they were kind words. So thank you for that.
oh, thank you, Stacy. I appreciate so much. Appreciate you reading my book and sharing that quote. And thank you so much. It's been a delight to have you on. I will have to have you back on because I know there were a lot of subjects that we did not
Yes.
dive into. It's such a
And
broad,
just a teaser to everybody on the phone. I'm going to have Carol on my podcast.
yay.
She accepted before we got on, so that's a teaser. So look for that as well.
Well, it's been absolutely a pleasure. Thank you again, Stacy. And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye bye.
Bye bye.